in this edition of the Mike On Podcast.
One of the first declarations of President Bola Tinubu-led federal government is the removal of fuel subsidy. These have sparked different reactions among citizens. Since these announcements, many Nigerians have lamented on the rising cost of goods and services. Different pundits have been for and against the fuel subsidy regime. Perhaps the fuel subsidy regime is one of Nigeria's most debated economic policies. This is because of the burden of funds it has on the Federation account. In 2023, an estimated amount of 4.4 trillion naira, about $10 billion was spent on fuel subsidy. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, advised that Nigeria should end the subsidy regime. The IMF accrue a cause of Nigeria's increased fiscal deficit to the cost burden of the fuel subsidy. But pundits who are opposed to the removal of fuel subsidy maintain that, considering the economic situation of Nigerians at the moment, with the national minimum wage of 30,000 naira, the citizens will not be able to bear the spillover effect of this policy. They argue that Nigeria does not really subsidize any sector than the oil sector. Hence, the end of the policy without having all the economic policies that absorb the economic gap created by the removal. The Nigeria Labour Congress (NLC) has opposed this policy and threatened an industrial action. They term this an ambush against Nigerians. The current panic and uproar among Nigerians are valid because these questions beg for answers. What are the policies in place by the current government that will serve as palliatives to the effect of the removal? What is the assurance that the funds for the removal will not be embezzled? This is President Tinubu's first test. Is he on the right path? Is he on the wrong path? Join Chinua Kimbaloye today on the Mike On Podcast as he hosts key players in the political space for this important discuss.
The 60% of Us series.
Hello and welcome to the Mike On Podcast. I'm Chinua Kimbaloye. As you may have noticed, this podcast is designed to reach and stimulate conversations affecting certain demographics, and that which is the Nigerian youth. We target and focus on that to get the Nigerian young people talking, yet holistic in its areas of coverage in terms of the guessing and topics. It is every weekday show, Politics Today, and Weekend Sunday Politics on Channels Television. Today's topic, first week major test, Tinubu and the subsidy remover consequences, is another way to set the agenda for the new government as we have been doing, and to also consider as many angles as possible in the wake of the hardship many Nigerians have had to face in the last couple of days. President Bola Tinubu dropped what appears to be the highlight and most powerful phrase of his inaugural speech. 3 words, yet so powerful. Subsidy is gone. The ripple effect is still being dealt with. Stop dispensing. Eventually, a price adjustment from the NNPC Limited and campaigns that it would hit the ground running. Is his declaration on subsidy removal a good call? Is Nigeria truly having a departure from the subsidy regime? What should the government do to ease the effect of the removal on an average Nigerian? The president has also made some other key decisions after assuming office. It is barely a week. What is your assessment of the Tinubu presidency so far? Now, it's going to Bola Tinubu and his team are going into the second week in the saddle. And yet, that is the same week that the NLC are threatened that they will go on indefinite nationwide strike. As a new government, would you like to face the wrath of the labor union, shutting down the economy and the nation with protest and strike action? Is that a way to go? What can he do? They've been asking questions. In fact, one of those things they ask is that whenever and when next they are going to meet, they want to meet people with titles, not people without titles. I'm being joined tonight by Omoyele Sowore, a presidential candidate of the AAC in the 2023 election. Thank you so much Mr. Showara, for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you for bringing me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Appreciate it. And I have a political commentator and a member of the APC, Mr. Alwan Hassan. Thank you so much, Mr. Alwan Hassan, for joining us. Yes, and we do have to give us some economic perspective in all of these. Mr. Seun Onigbinde, co-founder of Budget. Thank you so much, Mr. Onigbinde, for joining us. All right, let's get started, everyone. I saw first and foremost Mr. Showara's tweet, and you're one of those who have reported on your platform, Sahara Reporters, the many evils of subsidy scam, and there are several headlines to that effect published by your online newspaper. And you tweeted about Bola Tinubu and the new government. Let me ask your view, because the argument, I'm not sure, is that whether or not subsidy should not go. I think that there's a huge number of Nigerian elites who have agreed that subsidy would go. But the question is, at when will it go, and how will it be handled? So, Mr. Showara, what are your views on what has happened in the past 1 week?
I've been involved in the struggle against removal of subsidies since my university days in the 90s. And it is very, very interesting that the arguments for every government that's come and assaulted these subsidy regimes is simple. That because they cannot rein in their friends in the and that they feel that the ordinary people should pay for the crimes and sins of those who are ripping Nigeria off through subsidy. It is time to let it go. In that they make another argument, which is that whenever there's removal of subsidy, they will take the profit from the subsidy itself and reinvest socially in bringing roads, improving transportation, and all the nice things that they're supposed to do that they didn't do. This argument has not changed over the last 30 years of my life. And here we come again. We are going to remove subsidy because it's bleeding our economy, according to them. But nothing has been done to rein in on the people who are using subsidy to bleed the economy. These are their friends within the corporate sector, both at home and abroad. And this is just basically to say to the people, we're giving you a middle finger, especially the poor. We're going to remove this subsidy because it's no longer affordable and tenable. And it's also very interesting and very important to also say that this is always the position of the IMF and the World Bank, that subsidy is not sustainable, but nobody tells you why the rich, the powerful, and the politically connected don't get their subsidies removed. And do you know how they get subsidies? They get it through bank loans, letters of credit, waivers, and we even have an institution in this country that takes care of what the outcome of the responsible political and economic business class engages in, and that is AMCON. AMCON sucks over 5.3 trillion naira, if not more, in terms of cleaning up after rich people. Sometimes they're not more than 100 of them. So my argument and my position has always been that in this country is oil subsidy or petroleum subsidy. We don't call it oil subsidy anymore because they have taken away subsidies from a number of products, petrochemical products. There's no subsidy for kerosene. There's no subsidy for diesel. There's no subsidy for... But I can't find anywhere where, this is outright punishment. And every government that comes into power have done this since the last 30 years that I can remember. And Tinubu is not different. But why his own case is probably more interesting is legitimacy. And I believe that probably part of the reason why the U.S. accepted to send a delegation to attend his inauguration was that he would remove subsidy and announce it once and for all as the most important policy statement during his inauguration. It's a shame, but the people to go along with this program of yours. We'll talk more about it because I've seen a lot of arguments again flying around, and I'm glad that you have some of our very interesting friends on your show today. So don't let me take all the space so that we can hear from others and we can take the argument to the balance.
Yeah, let me get a clarity from you. Are you saying that the disposition or the statement made by the president on his inauguration was a wrong one? Or what? I mean, do you agree?
I tweeted immediately that this is thoughtless.
What exactly do you mean? Is it to remove it, or what exactly do you mean by
the announcement of the removal? Because it immediately created economic dislocations. In fact, on a lighter mode, I think some of the people that went for this inauguration are probably stranded, unable to get back to wherever they came from, because the response was immediate. I mean, this is senseless. Choke the people of Nigeria, especially the poor, majority of our poor, who benefit a little bit from some of these petrochemical products in our country.
But if you argue, Mr. Shawara,
if you announce it that day or another day, I'm opposed to it. Okay. But I thought that day was completely thoughtless on his behalf, and I think he was just trying to.
Okay, so the idea, Mr. Shawara, so the idea is that the removal of subsidy in itself was not wrong, but announcing it on the.
And I'm willing to debate anybody who says there's subsidy in the country. The people they are subsidizing are the criminals who are well connected in the petrochemical sector. That is what you are punishing Nigerian people for.
Let me allow Mr. Hassan to look at it. Do you agree with Mr. Shawara that the decision of the president was a wrong one on the day?
There is no better decision than kicking it. He has promised. President Ashwaju has promised that he's going to hit the ground running, and exactly what he's doing. We don't need to wait for anything. Subsidy needs to go. Why do we have dilapidated schools? Why do we have bad health care? It's because the monies budgeted for this subsidy are more than the monies that are budgeted for health and education in this country. Why do you need to keep it? If we have a focused president that can use the money spent for subsidy to channel them to education and healthcare, we are better off with that. And let me tell you something, Sheung. Just yesterday, fuel prices in Chad, Cameroon, Niger, and Benin Republic rose to 800 plus. They were buying 550. We were subsidizing them. The 60 million liters they said they carry from Lagos every day for Nigerians are not for Nigerians. But from now to the next month, maybe we'll realize or we'll find out how much liters that it's actually sold to Nigerians in Nigeria. We can't be consuming 60 million liters in a day. You know that. And even the NNPC GMD is coming up to say that is what is being taken from Lagos, but we don't know how much goes into the market. Because, of course, you can't be selling at 195 at the rate in Nigeria, or maybe 250 in black markets in Nigeria, and you sell 550 or 600 naira in Niger, Chad, and Cameroon, and you tell me a businessman will now keep his fuel tanker in Adamawa instead of driving 20 kilometers to Cameroon.
Are you aware of the talks of internal racket, even within the system, of how some powerful people are aligning themselves, are using the subsidy regime and the who are using the subsidy money, and which is perhaps one of the things that Shawara is saying about the subsidy regime, that look, it's being just a couple of people, because you imagine that there are those who have now been linked allegedly of having stakes in some of the filling stations in the countries that you are talking, in our neighboring countries. They are the ones collecting the money and the ones benefiting from it.
So you see,
just a few Nigerians.
Okay,
are you aware of that?
The difference now is there is this notion you have brought up, and there is another thing that is called underpayment. Underpayment is the only people that buy PMS to Nigerians as at now is NNPC, and that NNPC would have to buy it more than 195. If you put everything together, the difference is what is being paid as the cost of bringing in PMS. So it's not like there is somebody that collects subsidy money. Is the loss is on Nigerians and our money. It is money subsidized for PMS as it is being brought in. I don't know if you understand me.
I'm getting you.
It's not like before that we have 30 marketers
that will be
giving money to go abroad and buy PMS.
What do you make of what Sowore said about the decision of the president? On that day, maybe it was a wrong strategic move to have removed
so
it on that day.
There is no better time to do the right thing. There is no better time to do the right thing. Once you know something is right, be focused, implement it, and let's move on.
All right. So let me bring in Mr. Onigbinde. Mr. Onigbinde, now I like you to look at these issues from, the president has removed it, he said it, and it does look like the prices in the marketplace is reflecting the government's position and this position too. Now, NLC has threatened that they will go on strike if the government does not rescind and NNPC Limited specifically does not rescind or revert to the old price. If a nationwide strike happens and there is protest across the country, what kind of danger are we looking at, economically speaking?
All right. Thank you so much for the for this, and thanks so much, Mr. Sowore, and thanks so much, Sean, the guest. I think the challenge is that we're facing a crisis that has been occasioned by, where we have found ourselves. And where we have found that afford for subsidy. That's just the reality. And we can debate the amounts. We can debate the numbers. We can say it's 6 trillion, it's 4 trillion, it's supposed to be 2 trillion. We can even say NNPC had not been straightforward, because there was a time NNPC said, you know what we are just doing is crude swap, which means we give some products on the other side. So maybe whatever we should be paying for. And NNPC does not pay for that crude anyway, even though you should pay for it. Maybe what we should be hearing is we should be paying only if that is what it is. But over time, that argument has not even been clear to anybody. That argument has not been clear to anybody. And the only thing you have right now is that NNPC is heavy on the side that we cannot afford it, and we are being owed 2.8 trillion naira. For me, there are two things that are going to happen. Definitely, if you remove fuel subsidy, let's assume that the entire fuel subsidy is around 4.5 trillion, and you remove fuel subsidy, something happen. NNPC is going to start remitting to the Federation account. That means this oil, the crude oil that is given to NNPC to refine and bring into the country, the value of that crude will now be paid into the Federation account, which should be, NNPC can be up. Because see, on this old fuel subsidy, we have done ludicrous things. At the time, in Jonathan's time, we were using the Federation account to pay for the subsidy. Later, we started using excess crude account to pay for subsidy. Later, we started borrowing, to pay for subsidy. In fact, later we started using Euro bonds. Recently, President Buhari's government, they said part of the receipt for Euro bonds will be used for payment of fuel subsidy. So if you look at it technically, we've been going through motions, things that actually make no fiscal sense. So we're at the point in time that the corruption, the abuse, the volume records, all of that is become so overwhelming that it just makes sense on average mind that let this thing go. But if this goes, we must also come back to the mathematics. If we're spending 4.5 trillion on fuel subsidy, if that money now, and we no longer have to borrow that money, if NNPC now has to pay its money into the federal coffers for a crude that it receives, how much does that money compensate for the price increases and the challenges that Nigerians are going to face. And how is the Nigerian government even going to meet the crisis that would follow up that? Because number one, you are going to increase minimum wage, or there will be wage increase, especially at the public sector level. If it's done in a fair way, because there's a way that they could just toss a token on top of it. If it hits the 70 to 80,000 naira per month minimum wage, that adds another 2 trillion naira to the federal government budget. So technically, you're just writing from one side of the sheet and you're moving to another side of the sheet, because don't forget that whatever gains we get from first subsidy will be distributed across all tiers of government, and the federal government gets around just 52% of it. So my own is just the argument for subsidy at this point is more around the inefficiencies and the abuse and the route for corruption that he has provided. It's not a means that when we net it off in terms of gains, it doesn't mean that the federal government will go scot-free of this, or the government will go scot-free around this, because definitely there will be increase in market prices, and definitely workers have a right to demand increased wages, and this also brings additional costs to the government. I think I will stop at that point.
Yeah, sure. So let me. There are a few things that I'd like you to tackle before I bring back Showra into the conversation. So the first one, quickly, is that the move subsidy, economically speaking, on the very first day of the president's coming into office, how would you describe it? Was it strategic enough?
I don't think it's strategic enough. I don't think it follows any rule of justice, morality, because see, there's a process to remove of fresh subsidy. And it's just because you are the leader. Like I've said in the tweet, you must lead by example. And what does that mean? By moral example, there are 3 issues that are still remaining. One is look at governors, presidents, ministers, aides, the cost of maintaining all that paraphernalia and the structure of government. You can't continue to exude in opulence and expect the people to bear the brunt and the pain. So you have to have a conversation on that. The bearing the pain cannot be onto the side of the equation. Government must be.
Yeah. Let me ask you quickly. If you were Bola Tinubu and you're assuming office on the 29th of May 2023, when would you have removed the subsidy?
I'll wait. I will have a conversation with Juice.
Can you please? There was a little glitch in the connection there. Can you repeat what you said? If you were Bola Tinubu, when would you remove it, and how would you remove it?
I will give it 3 months. I'll give it 3 months, and I'm being honest. I'll give it 3 months. And the first thing I will do is that the cost of government, the size of government has to reduce. I have to show in facts, and I have to show it by evidence. I have to show by my action that I'm not going to have another 100 or 200 aides. I'm not going to be driving in a car of 70-car convoy. I have to make an example to show that I am also feeling this pain like you do. I will show an example by the Oron Saye report. Whatever needs to be adjusted, whatever needs to happen by agencies that should be merged, agencies that should go back to departments, commissions or agencies that need to be abolished so that we can have a much leaner government, I will do that. And thirdly, what I will do is on procurement. I will show that there can be a difference without public procurement and contracting is done so that actually efficiency is not that when something costs 10 naira and government is buying that same thing for 5 naira. When I show that, I build up trust. I build up a bit of commitment to show that I'm putting you to a position of pain, which is going to be, but I'm also on that receiving side as much as possible. Not you waking up and say, I yank off subsidy, and you have not even proven to us that government would do things differently the way it has been done in the previous space. I don't agree to that point. If you've been paying subsidy for over 30-something or 25 years, are you saying that 3 months of paying subsidies is what's going to kill Nigerians? No.
So, but for you, so the removal and the announcement on that day was more political than economic.
I don't think. I felt maybe it was careless. Maybe some people just wrote it in the speech and say subsidy, because we already know. Everybody knew that the previous president said by June 30 is the final day of where appropriation has been made in the budget. So if when anybody asks me, when would subsidy leave based on the previous arrangement, of the previous government, it was that by July 1, there will be no subsidy. So there was no point putting it in that speech and say subsidy is gone, because the market, and you can see that they tried to walk back that statement, but market forces have reacted already in some sort of way. So it looks like he can't even walk back at this point unless it's very clear and he gives a clear directive to NNPC and maybe the marketers. But yeah, I felt just a bit of excitement to say we're going to do this and we're going to do this. But so for me, there's a process to build trust now, because this was what we complained about in 2012, 2011. When we say kill corruptions, don't kill Nigerians. We're very emphatic about that situation. Corruption is a big problem in the whole pipeline. And like I've shown you, if you remove fuel subsidy, you're also going to increase wages. So definitely, you're moving on one side of the book to another side of the book. But there's a lot of inefficiency and corruption that benefits a few people, and also NNPC as hidden behind that toga. Yes, to pay for fuel subsidy. So that has to go, because a lot of people are profiting and benefiting and putting a lot of inefficiencies in that system. I agree. But for you to just do it without not defining structure or showing a bit of trust, that we can trust you to do this. I mean, we have food inflation at 24%. We have not had conversation about public transport systems. A lot of things that could have been done to show Nigerians that.
What do you fear? What do you fear about this decision? I mean, first week in office, he made that decision. Market forces reacted. Price of commodities reacted. And the economy generally is reacting to it. What do you fear could affect this government? Because economy is at the spine of any government's activity, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, he has the advantage. One is a long I mean, if he doesn't get thrown out by the Supreme Court, which means he has 4 years, Nigeria get full. So I think that he wants to tap into that heavily. There's also the fear of social disorder. If things gets to the brim or to the brink, definitely Nigerians can react. In which way we see what's happening in Senegal currently. We've seen what's happening in Sri Lanka. So you don't want to put Nigerians on the edge where even your legitimacy can be thrown to disorder. That's my fear, because if people are in pain, if people are in crisis, if you have not provided, because what does government exist for? Government exists for the welfare of the people. So whatever policy you are designing, whatever framework you are designing, there has to be a measure that you think about the poorest and the most vulnerable. It's as simple as ABC. So for me, I think that angle has to be brought in. And if there's another appointment I would advise him to find at this point, is look for a chief economic advisor who can actually allow him to put these things in proper context. Yeah.
Let me bring him back, Showore. A lot of you who contested in 2023, including Mr. Peter Obi, your very good friend, and Mr. Atiku Abubakar, and Bola Tinubu, and a host of others who were on the ballot, had sort of sought the interest and caught the fancy of a lot of voters to say, subsidy we go. A lot of question. One of the major questions for those of us who are asking you will react or how you will handle the issue of subsidy. A lot of you had said you will remove subsidy. And there are a lot of sound bites and quotes in that respect. But now that this has happened, if you were in Bola Tinubu's shoes, how would you handle this situation, considering the fact that there is an imminent labor reaction next week?
Never been Bola Tinubu's shoes. Those are not the kind of shoe sizes that I go for in my life.
But you've wanted to be president, so he is president. Maybe being a president might be one of the shoes that...
There are different types of presidents. There are legitimate presidents, illegitimate presidents who rig themselves into office. I wasn't going to be any one of that, and my position is clear. Secondly, my position is also very clear about fuel subsidy. You can't lump me with those who said they will remove fuel subsidy. I said I'm not going to remove fuel subsidy because I know there's no fuel subsidy. In reality, the thing we call fuel subsidy in Nigeria, as our friends have even spoken about it, particularly Shell, is the subsidization of the criminal elite in the country. My friend who was the APC guy, who has now jumped from Buhari to Tinubu, we call them Ajib, any government in power. They support anything. When they closed the border, he supported it. When they put Shore in prison, he supported it. He supports everything. That's Hassan, I think, the other guy that came before. This guy, that's what they do for a living. That's their own service to humanity. Support everything as long as it profits them. But to go on the side of what should happen, I wouldn't have been a president who supports illegalities or who supports criminality. Everybody that's speaking about subsidy today is referring to one problem: our inability to deal with the economic sabotage that has become part of our lives. So you are allocating subsidies to the poor, but the process is hijacked by the economic elite. They take over the process. They import fuel. Sometimes they don't even import the fuel.
So who are these people? Is it possible for us to unmask them?
Who
are these people? Who are these people?
You know the oil importers, both local and internationally. You know the NNPC people. Don't tell me you don't know them. So many of them were arrested in 2012 after occupying Nigeria. So you can go and ask what happened to their trial. Nobody was sent to jail. We just entertained ourselves with the process and the names of people who were kind of. In 2012, a lot of vessels that reportedly were bringing petrol to Nigeria did not exist. Some of them had sunk in the open sea 20 years before. And I think I was listening to a small clip by former CBN governor and the ex-emir of Kano, Sanusi, who was saying that when you go back and do the calculations, when you do the verification of how many petrol, liters are brought into Nigeria on a regular basis, by the way, at any time. Secondly, that so many of these ships that brings in fuel, according to the insurance companies, are nowhere near Nigeria at the time they said they are bringing fuel. And then you go to the NNPC. The NNPC is a private entity at this time, according to even the Nigerian government. It has been re-registered as a limited liability company or a public liability company, whichever status it has. What business does an NNPC have, again, to be telling us fuel prices when they are no longer a public entity owned by the Nigerian government? It's been privatized. So there's a lot of dislocations, deliberate dislocation. There's a lot of misinformation, and disinformation as well, to make the Nigerian people feel overwhelmed that they are the ones, their subsidies the one killing the Nigerian economy. I'm saying and repeating here today, it is not subsidy that is killing the Nigerian economy. It is the Nigerian economic cabal that is balkanizing the country, that's killing. Nobody is talking about AMCON, for instance. And Shehu is here. Shehu knows how much AMCON is consumed, is taken in from rich people. Sometimes there are not up to 500 of them. They go and borrow money from banks, no collaterals. The Nigerian government will take these toxic loans. Sometimes somebody will be owing 150 billion naira. They will take a wristwatch of $5,000 from him and use it as a collateral, to pay for the 150 billion. These are things that we know. I'm a journalist. You are a journalist. It's the reason why I'm opposed to any kind of removal of subsidy. This is how we address poor people. Everywhere in the world, poor people are taken care of by government. The U.S. government was interested in. Okay, go ahead. What do you want?
I was going to ask you, what would you do if you had won the election on the issue of subsidy? And Nigerians are asking.
I have said it repeatedly, I will not remove subsidy. But by now, you would have been hearing of a lot of disruption of the criminal elements who are bringing in fuel in the country.
But just a moment.
Now, your central bank governor will probably be cooling his heels somewhere. The NNPC, MD, or GMD, whomever it is, who are all involved in these criminal activities, will be arrested by now. They will be answering questions as to, because if you don't disrupt the network of criminals in this country, you can have peace. Shehu is saying it now that we need to increase minimum wage to 80,000. How are you even going to survive on 80,000 naira in a month if you are buying petrol at 500, depending on where you are located? One thing that nobody has also spoken of, there's also a fund, what they call Petroleum Equalization Fund funding somewhere, which means that if you take fuel from Lagos to Kano, they pay you the differentials of the transportation. That's a huge amount of money that is wasted.
We are being told that
if you
being
go
over.
to Chad now, petrol is right, and it's selling for 850 in Chad. Where do you think I'll take my petrol to? Chad, because that's where it will make most. Economic 101. There's no amount of from there as long as your borders are manned by criminals in the customs. All this fuel that is supposed to be meant for Nigeria will go to the places where they have the highest profit. There's no country in the world where you allow oil marketers to run your country, or any marketer for that matter, not even in the US, which is the belly of the beast of capitalism. There's always regulation. Government is always involved. Prices went up, pump prices went up in the US recently. The president of the US was on that matter on a regular basis until the prices went down. They also subsidized at the state, local governments, and also the federal level to ensure that people don't suffer. So people just talk carelessly in Nigeria about subsidy as if it's a crime to subsidize poor people.
Let me jump in quickly.
Let me jump in quickly. But when the COVID subsidy came to Nigeria, what did they do? They stole it.
Yeah. So
palliatives were stolen.
So there are those who argue in this whole thing, and I also want us to look at the implication of what is going to happen next week. I'm imagining what our world and the streets of Nigeria will look like, because now the last week looked like a lot of queues on the expressways and on our roads. People are groaning on the cost of how much they buy fuel. Now, if the federal government does not yield to the demands of labor, there will be a nationwide strike. There will be protests across the nation. Now, Chore, I want to know your view. Would you join the protest if labor begins? And also, if you can also answer, because this looks alike, considering the fact that TUC NLC endorsed Labour Party and its candidate Peter Obi, what are your views on the NLC and Labour, the union, the Labour community stand on the issue of subsidy?
Listen, there are two positions on labor. A lot of people are going to be skeptical about the labor movement, because when we did Subsidy Occupy Nigeria in 2012, the labor movement went behind our back. I wasn't in Nigeria, I was in the US, I was involved, and settled without anybody knowing. Before we knew it, everybody had been left on their own. So labor of Peter Obi is all. They were a labor party without workers. Go and ask them today. Peter Obi doesn't have a minimum wage position. He only says that he will pay workers every 2 weeks. No amount. I'm the only person amongst the candidates who is very clear about minimum wage. One is I'm after a living wage. The second aspect of it is that, yes, you are right. The labor movement sat there when Peter Obi was saying I will remove subsidies, said nothing about it. It sounds hypocritical now that they want to fight against removal of oil subsidy. But that is not the issue. The issue for me with labor is credibility. If labor calls a meeting for us to have a strike or a protest, I'll request for one thing, that the labor movement or the NSC or the TUC will not have the capacity to call off the strike. It will be calling off of the strike or the protest will be done by another body that is composed of labor leaders, civil society groups, several other people that are interested, because every one of us have learned our hard lessons with going to strike with labor. If you go and protest with labor, by 12 noon, labor can leave you there and police will be beating you up. You'll not hear from the labor movement because most of them are in bed with the system. And I'm not afraid to say this publicly, that the labor movement has a credibility problem. But that is not to say that if they are genuinely interested in carrying this battle to fruition, I will not join them. I will join them. If they don't call a strike, the Nigerian people who are choking will fight back, whether there's labor or no labor. That's one thing you guys must understand. I'm not bound by any labor strike. They are calling their strike for Wednesday. Are you sure that there will not be a protest by Monday? When people can't go out, they will strike. So it's not going to be a labor-induced. This is a suffering-induced resistance, and it will happen whether there's labor or not. But if I'm satisfied with labor and there are enough consultations that they will not sabotage or go behind our backs to have those kind of consultations that Oshiomhole used to have when he was the NLC president, I will gladly join them. And I will join anybody who resists this kind of hardship that is being brought upon Nigeria by the Tinubu-led regime as it stands today.
Let me bring in Alwan. So if you look at it, I mean, statistics show that registered motor vehicles on Nigerian roads are less than 15 million. Registered vehicles on Nigerian roads are less than 15 million. That is what statistics, I mean, it might be different. Data is a major problem in Nigeria. It might be more than that. And you look at it, Chad, now around 396 per liter. That's how much they sell. 413 in Nigeria Republic, Cameroon, 481. Ghana, 487. Benin Republic, 497.
These prices you're calling on Nigeria.
Kenya, 662.
The prices you're calling on Nigeria might not be recent.
These are the
definitely going
before
to go.
Nigeria took the decision.
It's definitely going
so
to go.
So if you look at all of this, there's a lot of criticism about the approach of your party and the president, Bola Tinubu, on how he approached it. And, I mean, wouldn't there be some kind of chaos and some kind of disaster in the works if Labour dares to go on strike next week?
I think I advise Labour should just allow us to be.
What do you mean?
Yes.
Are Labour Union not Nigerians?
Yeah, but they should just allow us to be. You see, already there is subsidy going on in the civil service. We had COVID. We had 3 years of COVID, and just 15% of the civil service were doing the job. The rest were subsidized and still subsidized. So we understand that even the civil service is bloated. People have been paid monies. If you go, there are drivers in departments showing that departments that do not have cars. Go to our civil service and see. Agencies. I agree with the idea, the process that the Sheun guidance. Yes, the process. You understand the process of removing.
You think that Bola Tinubu made a mistake?
No, there was no mistake in it. Let me tell you.
No consultation.
I want to pick. No, but he has told you a year ago.
No plan, no clear plan on how to
relax.
The process.
He has told Nigerians. He has told Nigerians a year ago that no matter how you protest, I'll remove it. And they voted for him. So Nigerians are comfortable with removing it.
You think it is okay to do that?
Absolutely.
For what has been described as
let's talk about
not strategic.
Let's talk about the majors. The speaker spoke about Sheun, spoke about saying they could have reduced cost of governance, merge some duplications of responsibilities in our agencies. Then the other third major that I've forgotten. So, but you see, Sheun, if you try to merge agencies, you're going to retrench, and Labour will still come up in our civil service that are redundant. You find 15 auditors in a department. 15 auditors in a department that only 1 or 2 people do the jobs. You find a driver in a department in our civil service that do not have a vehicle. The department doesn't have a vehicle. So these are things that we should also look at and reduce cost of governance. If we do that, if you don't remove subsidy and you go into retrenched civil service, you grapple with that battle for 2 to 3 years to come, and the subsidy will still be paid.
Do you think for a moment that this is questioning the legitimacy, it's giving some kind of resistance? Do you think so?
You see, one good thing about being a good leader is to be focused. Take a decision. Be focused on what you want to do. Be firm. And that's what Bola Tinubu is doing. He is focused. He's determined. Look at his activities within just 1 week. He's done a lot. He's spoken with the GMD and NPC, the CBN governor. He's formed a committee that are speaking with them, having meetings with them and Labour, trying to come up with a so-called for Nigerians. So but then coming back to say that you want to give 5,000 to 50 million people in Nigeria because of fuel subsidy removal. So if they give 5,000 naira today and you buy fuel of 3,000, who buys the fuel for you next tomorrow? Doesn't make sense.
Any palliative?
People should learn to live
Do you
within
think
their
there should
means.
be palliative?
It doesn't make any sense.
The $800 million that it was being requested by the Buhari government was meant to be for social intervention.
That's 5,000 naira.
Yeah.
So that's
you
what
don't
I'm.
think
That's
that
what I'm
money
saying.
should be used
It
for
doesn't
that?
make sense to give me 5,000 naira today
So
and
the
buy
Buhari
fuel.
government was totally
and
wrong.
buy
with
fuel
that.
of 3,000, 4,000. No. I'm just saying it does not make sense. It's someone else's
World Bank has
policy.
agreed on that funding. They
And it's a loan. It's a loan, Shehu.
a loan, absolutely.
So we are collecting a loan to just do things that do not make sense. You're giving 5,000 naira to 50 million people today. Once you share it off, they buy the fuel today. Tomorrow, who buys it for them? So when you now look at other things you can do, determine market prices. Government is supposed to go into the markets, monitor and determine market prices of commodities. Once the government is able to do this, build infrastructure, make it easy for farmers to bring in products from the farm to the markets. These are things the government should start looking at.
Alon, I take you back to the question I asked you earlier. For a president who emerged with less than 39% of votes to him, which is perhaps the lowest of percentage of vote any president has gotten since 1999. So the issue of legitimacy, popularity of that mandate, is now they're in court challenging Bola Tinubu's mandate. So the question I asked you, will there be some kind of question mark on the legitimacy of Bola Tinubu's mandate if there is a nationwide strike and protest coming next week?
Show there has never been a time when the contest of being a president had 3 or 4 popular presidential candidates like this time around.
But the question still stands that he has a lower margin to have emerged, compared to other times. So the question of legitimacy of office is going to be there. People are going to ask questions. The popularity of his mandate is going to also be called to question when they are trooping to the street and people are in protest on the second week of his assumption of office. And that's why I'm asking the question. Do you fear that there's going to be that question mark on his mandate?
How can there be a question mark for
There might be question mark on, not like you are not a father, but they will question whether you're a good father. And that's the question I'm asking. In the second week of Bola Tinubu's assumption of office, and Nigerians are going to the street, Labour is leading a nationwide protest and strike, wouldn't there be a question mark?
Because of
pressure?
A decision that should have been taken a lot of years ago.
So that's why
he took
the
on
question
a decision.
whether it was strategic.
He took on a decision. He took on a decision to save the masses. He took on a decision that will build our infrastructure on health.
Was there a proper explanation
education
on that decision?
But no one needs to explain anything to you. This explanation has been going on in the last 20 years. Shehu, it has been going on in the last 20 years, 15, 20 years. That subsidy is fraud. Subsidy is a scam. Subsidy should stop. Subsidy should do this. We don't need subsidy. We've done it has been said a lot of times, Shehu. There is no need to say it again. What we need is a firm president that would take a decision and stand on his decision. That's what President Ashwaju has done.
Some kind of autocratic nature.
It's not autocratic. At some point, being a president, Sheun, you must be firm and decisive. The buck stop on your table.
You know, one of the anger of the Labour is that was his decision was autocratic. No consultation. No, just took a decision that should have been in consultation with others.
What do they want to consult him for?
That's Labour's issue.
So, but what's the consultation?
Labour.
Saying bring in Suko or share 5,000 naira after collecting a loan of $800 million. Share 5,000 naira to 50 million people today. Let them buy fuel. Tomorrow they will they will stop themselves.
What's your biggest fear? Should Labour go to the streets?
I don't have any fear, and that's their strike will not hold on.
Why?
I'm telling you, it will not hold waters.
Why not?
Why? Because Nigerians are tired of Labour. Because Labour are not sincere. They themselves are not sincere. Honestly.
What do you mean by that?
They are partisan. They are partisan. They have a party. Labour is not supposed to be for Nigerians because they are partisan. They have a party.
What about their own agenda? What about
their agenda is opposition. They are opposition to the government.
On
we will
this
not
issue
follow
of
them.
subsidy.
Absolutely,
What about the issue that
you
being
can't
raised?
be a politician today and tomorrow you are an activist. You can't.
Does that take
Oh,
away,
and tomorrow you're for Nigerians.
does that take away the merit of the issue?
Absolutely. That's the Labour Party going on strike on Wednesday. So they are opposition party. We need to just be serious on what we do in this country. We need a decisive and firm president, and we've gotten one. He's focused.
Wouldn't that have some consequences?
The consequences are good roads, good healthcare, good. Those are the consequences of a firm president in Nigeria.
Let me bring back Seun. If you give us an understanding, and I'd like to get some people's views, and of course get the panelists to be able to react to them. I see some hands there, so I'll take randomly some people on Twitter Spaces. Whole policy, but Seun, all the indices, economic indices in this country are in the negative. Most of them are in the negative, and for Bola Tinubu, whom a lot of people think to have some level of confidence in his capacity to be able to handle the economy. What would you say he should be doing? Should he talk to Labour? Should he dialogue with them?
And I want to first take on the previous speaker about the fact that if we remove subsidy, we'll get good roads, good roads. I mean, Nigeria, those are wild assumptions. What is in the building? You see children sitting on the floor in tattered roofs. You see roads in local markets, an economic engine for a state. You don't need first subsidy removal to give an extra 100 billion. And I've done the math for you. You make it maybe possibly a gain of 3 trillion naira a year, but maybe an NPC now fully remits the value of crude that it lifts. But at the end of the day, you divide that, maybe federal government has an extra 1.5 trillion. Is that what is the really gap in terms of fixing all of these issues? And the states are going to share the rest. So for me, a culture of accountability is something that has to come forward. A culture of efficiency, a culture of people where people believe that public resources are not their personal stash. It belongs to the Commonwealth. If that is not there, we are not doing anything. For my advice to President Tinubu, I think he has to walk back. That's my own belief, because like you said, this decision looks like an autocratic move. He is not consulted, he's not spoken to anybody. I know the previous government set a trap for him because they were there for 8 years. They had, at a point in time, this current NPC GMD said publicly that first subsidy is over, especially when those oil prices tanked to $30 per barrel, $37 per barrel. And he said, first subsidy is over, and that is the end of first subsidy, and that it was over. But at the end of the day, it just didn't make sense anymore. That you have a conversation with Labour, let them agree on a new minimum wage, let it be something that they're able to publish publicly, what that cascades to for every level.
But Seun, I mean, yeah. There seems to be a political angle that people are drawing into the to the stance of Labour, the Labour community, the endorsement they gave to the Labour Party and Peter Obi in the last election. Does that in any way taint their role in negotiation in this sense?
No, I don't think so. I mean, Labour Party has always clear that they have a political directorate. And I don't think at any point on the campaign the LNC chairman was there. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I didn't pay attention, but I don't think they have a court injunction that says that this is their own party. There's a Green Party in Germany. Their focus is on environmental sustainability and climate change. They form partnerships and they form coalitions with other parties that have different ideologies like the CDU. So for you to say that this is where we stand, this is the party, this is where we stand, it doesn't change our fact that poor people, workers are going to be in jeopardy if oil prices increase. So for everybody to balkanize them and to look at, we're going to take this from political angle, no. We must learn to understand, we must learn to draw lines. I mean, not everything comes to pass. And that's why I felt, the previous anger was trying to muddy the waters. Are we saying that 30,000 naira is a realistic minimum wage, considering that you're going to sell 500 naira, or that there will be inflation galloping to over 30%? Let's be honest with ourselves. What would 30,000 naira do to average worker? A politician in the lowest cadre You see a special assistant to the president earning 800,000 naira. Why is he not earning 30,000
So, but
naira?
you see, Sean,
Those are the
I like,
questions.
yeah, I like,
Those are the questions we
I like
must
that.
ask
I like that.
ourselves.
Sean, I like that. I want to say something on what you've just said. You see, increasing the salary will now have to have retrenchment.
Yeah, if you want to put that,
and it's going to be a trouble. It's going to be so much trouble too.
It's true. If you want to put down the table that public sector efficiency, and that's why I said three things. I said, one, make sure that the way you coordinate your government, you show efficiency. Two, the efficiency of the whole civil service itself has to come on the table. Third, contracting, public sector contracting. The idea that something costs 10 naira and government buys it for 25 naira, or the idea somebody brings a plane from Ethiopia, paints it, put it on the runway and put water cannons on it and flies it back, and nobody's having questions about that. Those are the things you have to put on
Absolutely,
the table. As long as people treat public resources like
grappling. If you try to bring up retrenchment in the civil service, you grapple with labor on that and even the masses on that for 2-3 years, and the fuel subsidy will still be going on. How would you pay? How?
No. How would you
so
pay?
Sometimes, how would you be paying for subsidy while talking with labor on retrenching civil service? Because some of the measures you mentioned that should have been taken before removing fuel subsidy.
Let's be honest, sir. And I will show you one thing. Between the doctors, teachers, soldiers, and policemen, they consume around 65% of government salaries.
Yeah.
Those people have answered. So if you are trying to cut government salaries and you're not retrenching doctors, you're not retrenching teachers, you're not touching soldiers, and you're not touching policemen, you have not even started at all. So let's be honest with ourselves.
So, but you can't touch those.
Yeah, there's gross inefficiency. I agree. But to say that the size of government, how much is the whole personnel cost of federal government? It's not up to 4 trillion naira. Yes. Divide it in dollars. It's not that $10 billion. This is an economy of $500 billion. The reality is that the federal government size is even small. They are inefficient. There are agents that shouldn't exist. ICPC, EFCC. There are a ton of research institutes that don't do jack or don't do anything. I expect, put it to the table. But that is not where you are going to squeeze your gains.
It's going to take a very long time to do that. You can't do that in 3 months.
I'm not saying you're going to do that in 3 months. I say symbolize it. Show us that you understand what is there and you're on the pathway of fixing that. In fact, the idea of even showing efficiency, it could be when we were protesting in 2012, the few things that Jonathan was putting back to us then was that I will make sure that all my elected officials fight economic class. He was saying that I will centralize public spending. There were a few things that he was putting, not because all of those things are going to change the dynamics, but it shows symbolically as a leader that if the people are bearing the brunt on one side, I can't be living in opulence on the other side. I must also show solidarity with them that we are in this situation together. And that's what has to come from the president. And if before you can build trust and say, okay, now I jack up subsidy. Because, I mean, I don't want jack up subsidy and you are still appointing 208. Jack up subsidy and you still have ministers living large. The interest account is swelling up and down. The security votes are still the same all around the way. I mean, and that's what Chuware's point is.
No, but Ashwaju has not appointed 8. Ashwaju has not appointed 208.
Yeah, we are easy to aggravate it. But when it comes about putting a little bit of discomfort on the ruling and the political class, we make it look as if it is impossible. That's not saying they're going to go away with $30 billion severance. Yes, Nigerians to bear the brunt. This is one thing that I'm mentioning.
All right, let's take a moment. Before I go to Shawura, I see a few people. I want to know what other Nigerians outside of the rooms where we're talking now are facing and what they're experiencing, because this has effect in several aspects of the economy. And I can see a few hands in the Twitter spaces, and I'll get a few people to talk. Just go straight to the point and let us know what are you experiencing aside what we have said, and perhaps if you have a poser for the panelists to speak on. Let me get Cyrus at Demola on Twitter Spaces. A quick one, Cyrus. Please go ahead. Your mic is on.
Thank you so much, Shimoki. Good conversation so far. I just want to ask a question because I see so far the conversation has been about the political angle. Nobody seems to be talking about the economic side of it. right? Speaking of the economic side of it, we know that we are not generating enough revenue to sustain subsidy as it stands right now. We are spending way more than we are earning as a country. So, if for those who are claiming that subsidy should remain, how do they intend, for government to generate enough revenue to sustain subsidy, not to just acquiring more debt? Because as things stand, I think about 22 or so percent of our expenditure is being spent on subsidy, much more than we are spending on education, on healthcare, and even security. So if that is the case, how then are you making a case for subsidy of a country that is plunging into high level of inflation, that is plunging into more poverty, and we are spending this so much money on subsidizing consumption? Where do you want to get the money from? Or is there a way that they can, make the government generate more revenue to sustain subsidy without going into much more debt than we've seen so far in the past 8 years? So that's my question.
Fantastic. So, Mr. Onigbine, can you please note that? I'd like you to respond to that. Let me allow Benga Akinyemi or at Benga_Akinyem on Twitter. What are you facing or experiencing in your area? Because your mic is on, we'd like to know your views.
Yeah, thank you, Shem. The current situation might not be fine, but it's a worthy sacrifice that all of us should endeavor to make for the betterment of our country. We can see Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu as the Gandhi of Nigeria. For India to be what they are today on the global map, there was a Gandhi who made sure he sacrificed for the country. He also endeavored that all the countrymen and women, they sacrifice. So this is what is happening in Nigeria. It does not make any economic sense for us to be subsidizing Nigeria, for other country people, neighboring country to be enjoying our own hard-earned money.
Benga, let me
so
ask
it does
you.
not make sense.
Let me ask you quickly. Do you drive your own car? Do you live in Nigeria?
That's a personal question.
No. I just wanted to know, because I really want people's reaction on how their lives have been impacted by the policy in the past week. So we're looking at the consequences that it's making.
Yes, even if I'm not in the right, if I don't experience that directly, I have people who experience that, and I can relate. So that's what people are passing through.
What do you think are the consequences of some of the consequences, as the case may be, of the past week decision?
Yeah, we are preparing for a greater future. Anything good does not come easy. Okay, Sheung, where do we get money? People are like my brother here, my good brother, he has been talking about revolution now. This is an economic revolution that is going to usher in a better future for us. We should just endure and be a good citizen and be patriotic about it. You are asking about cushioning the effect of this subsidy. Where does the government get it? When you borrow to pay, you borrow to subsidize, then you should be able to take tough decisions so that you can free the economy from the clog that has been slowing down the wheel of development. Right. Where do you get money from? Where? From where?
All right, Benga.
People are just becoming addiction economy. How do we get money?
All right, Benga, thank you so much. Let me allow another person. I want to get other people's views on this, then I'll get the panelists to react to some of this issue. At Karanja Sanction Skill on Twitter. If you are ready, your mic is on. Is it that? Okay. If you're not, maybe we can bring in
I'm here. I'm sorry.
Fabulous. So you can go ahead. Your mic is on.
My apologies. Yes, I wasn't at my mic. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm actually not Nigerian. I will just level up immediately. And I do not live in Nigeria. I'm Kenyan. I live in Kenya. And it's so important, and I wish that I'm a Pan-Africanist, by the way, and I wish that more of us Africans spoke to each other, because the copy-paste nature of what is happening in Nigeria just shows me that the things that are happening in our countries are not things that are making of ourselves. They are not of our own making. They are things that are being imposed on us from outside. The IMF specifically is the one that imposed this withdrawal of subsidies. And it's doing that because IMF is pushing countries in the global south generally to raise funds to repay their loans. All of us have issued euro bonds and all kinds of other bonds that have been bought by people in the northern hemisphere, in the US, in Europe, and all of those bonds are due for payment. So the IMF is forcing governments to raise the funds to repay that money. This is exactly what happened in August last year. Immediately after the Kenyan election, President Ruto, in his first week, the first thing he did was withdraw subsidies. Now, I will say that subsidies on consumption are not a very efficient way to cushion the economy anyway. The best way to cushion the economy is different kinds of subsidies on production. So, for example, our government did withdraw the subsidies, but William Ruto, our president, did very smartly replace those subsidies, moving them from oil instead into agriculture, into production. And when you subsidize, particularly agricultural production, it is a very efficient way to subsidize. It is one of the things that IMF structural adjustment program used to forbid us to do. So these are IMF policies. They are not Tinubu's policies. They were not Ruto's policies. What Tinubu could do very smartly after withdrawing these subsidies, which, by the way, it's true what some of your guests have said, these subsidies only go to benefit oil companies. Is he would move that money instead into subsidizing farming and giving tax breaks to the people at the lower end of the economic ladder, and perhaps raising taxes later on big corporations. But that is me. That is me soapboxing.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give recommendations to Nigeria on what to do, but that's what I would wish for our own country, for my own country, Kenya. And then one last thing I'll say is that after Ruto withdrew the subsidies, the oil prices shot up briefly, but they actually came back down. And today, oil is at the same price that it was before the subsidies anyway. So the subsidies apparently were necessary and were going to to rich oil companies, foreign oil companies, all of them American and European. Anyway, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Karanja.
If you will allow me.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah,
if you allow me, I'll post something on the Jumbotron.
Say it again.
If you'll allow me, I'll post something about IMF subsidies on the Jumbotron.
Please, you can. Go ahead. Thank you so much. I appreciate Karanja. I see that your country, you guys pay as much as 662 naira, Nigerian naira for per liter for petrol. Well, that's slightly about 100 and something naira higher than what Nigerians are paying today. But it's good to bring the Kenyan perspective into these to give some understanding, a more global understanding of these issues. Let me allow yet another person to jump in. And Olu at Emperor24, if you can jump in quickly and let us know your views on what we're discussing. Your mic is on, Olu.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I've been listening to everyone. Thank you, Sheung. About the subsidies removal of a thing, I think this has been going on for over 25 years. Each time every government come over, they want to remove subsidy. Some people will come from nowhere to stop them, okay? I will not dwell too much on the oil subsidy removal. But I will always blame our government with lack of transparency to the citizens. Lack of transparency in everything they're doing. So all subsidy, you're subsidizing a resources that is buffing you money. It's not profiting anything. And you kept quiet for over 25 years. All of a sudden, you come like a ghost. You want to remove subsidy that will affect all of us. More than 230 million population. We will all suffer for it. And the neighboring country will suffer. Then you want to force it on us. And you don't want to make any sacrifice from your side. Ordinary House of Rep delegate, they will collect more than 50% of individual salary of a person, of a banker, chairman salary. Only ordinary one person. So you don't want to make any sacrifice. There's no speech about it. There's no consultation about it. Nothing related to the newspaper that we are going to share the pain that they are having, they are receiving now, experiencing now, that all of us going to share part of it. No speech about it. All you want to do is to remove subsidy. Why we, as an ordinary citizen, will suffer for it. I think they have been pathetic, and since this problem have started, I've suffered enough on my company, because I do this shipping company. I have so many cars there to fuel in my shop there. So it also affecting me. It affecting everyone. Whatever they want to do now to the new president Bola Ahmed Tinubu should do it, and do something that will not affect the ordinary citizen. The marketers are crying already. We have experienced so much for the past 5 years or 3 years now. COVID came, pandemic, and now another one, war at Ukraine that is bringing us so many things. So we are all experiencing, both diaspora and the people living in Nigeria are experiencing so much hardship. So they should do whatever they want to do, because I know after God is government, we can't stop them anyway. So they should please, they should make it so soft for the ordinary citizen of Nigeria. They should at least, what are we benefit from this government?
Ayo,
What?
Ayo,
That is the question to raise.
Ayo, what do you think?
What are we benefiting?
Ayo, what do you think should be done to cushion the effect? And I understand, yes, and I know, because I bought fuel 34,000 naira yesterday. Something I was buying 14,000 to fill my tank.
Yeah,
34,000. Yeah. So I know there is a lot of hardship, and what do you think the government should do to cushion the effect? It's Ayo.
Please go ahead.
You want me to speak?
Olu? Yeah.
Olu, sorry, Olu, not Ayo. Sorry, Olu.
So what I would suggest in my own little idea now, right? NNC and TUC, they should summon themselves. They should form a committee, honest committee, meet with the federal government to have a hardship talk on this issue. Are you okay? It's what Nigeria voted for anyway. They voted for subsidy removal.
Yeah.
So why are they complaining now? So now they should face it squarely that we are going to remove it, but give us time to arrange all these things. Ghost petroleum delivers, all these unreal tanker that is liters that is, they call it 60 million per day. It's all lie. We are not there. It's not reflecting to Nigerians. We don't know how much are they spending on oil subsidy. All these things is being hidden from citizens, ordinary citizens.
Yeah.
And
Olu,
lack of transparency is there.
Thank you so much, Olu. Let me allow some very quick also other intervention at Babashin, at Oshe Bayo on Twitter. If you're there and you have your intervention, please quickly jump in. Your mic is on.
All right. Hi, Sean. Good evening. Hi, Sean. Good evening. Nice conversation so far. On the first subsidy removal, in as much as, almost all the leading candidates mentioned that they were going to
leading candidate.
So was a leading candidate. He's one of the most experienced candidates, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Chora, am I lying?
Absolutely, and I'm with you on that. But I mean, I think, removing fuel subsidy the way it was done, I think that's really the major conversation here. Yes, we cannot continue to subsidize, fuel, but in as much as we cannot continue to subsidize fuel, how do we, make it easy? I know a lot of people on this call, on this space, are probably, they probably can afford it, and they are not really thinking about, the average Nigerian, somebody who's probably earning less than 50,000 naira a month. My fuel tank is currently at half tank, and I may be skeptical to even walk into the filling station to go and buy, because I'll probably be spending about 36,000 to fill my car. Now, if subsidy was going to be removed, some of the intervention I personally was expecting is that, on electricity, I was expecting that the president would probably have declared like a state of emergency to, just show Nigerians the seriousness that I want to find a final solution to this. Why I believe that this subsidy removal, the way it was done, is going to, be a form of double punishment. Most Nigerians are generating their own power. Is it that you are using generator, you are using, what's it called? Solar. You are using solar, you are using inverter, and all of that. And none of these options actually come cheap. So imagine you probably run on an average of 100 liters of fuel in a month. You should know the implication of that before your car and all of that. So I was expecting, that the government would have really thought it through to say, okay, how can we reduce the burden? Electricity will be one area I was expecting the government to look into. Issues around transportation is another area I was expecting that, the government will look into. For those of us that probably live in Lagos, where can you really just commute easily via public transport? A lot of people that put their cars on the road, it's not because they feel like driving, right? But because just moving around without your car or without a private taxi is serious punishment. So all of these things, we keep comparing ourselves to developed countries. They will say in UK, fuel is sold for this, fuel is sold for that. But again, in these countries, driving is at your is because you just feel like driving. You necessarily don't have to drive because they are very, very good alternative, to driving. You can take a bus, you can take a train, and these things, is very convenient for the people. So for me, I'm really just, looking forward to what's going to be the outcome of the NFC conversation.
All right.
Overall nice conversation. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Let me get one more.
I think I wanted to
please
make some statements before you call your. And, my statements are political and also economic. I wanted to correct our friend who said that Nigerians voted for Asiwaju. Nigerians didn't vote for Asiwaju, to the point that he has the legitimacy to do what he likes. This is why we were saying during the election that people like Asiwaju should not be shielded from debate. But he ran away. He would never come to a debate because he knew that these questions would have exposed him, and probably he wouldn't have been able to get away with the stealing of the election like they do in every election season. I also wanted to react to our saying that you need a president that is firm. One firm president has just left to Daura. Look at the way he left Nigeria. He's firm. We wanted a former military guy who can solve solutions, who can bring solutions. 8 years. Your Buhari, firm, wicked, at the same time, democratic government we don't have. That's probably the reason why they can get away with some of these things. And I wanted to also address our Kenyan brother. Fantastic contribution. But he was talking about the price of fuel in Kenya. Why don't you ask what is the minimum wage in Kenya? Minimum wage in Kenya, Kenya reviews the minimum wage almost every year. Their latest is about $112. But our own is 30,000. 30,000 is less than 50,000 $50. So if I'm in Kenya and my fuel price is 400 naira, I can afford it because my minimum wage is 112. And by the way, if you're listening to me, brother, that minimum wage is also still slave-like. I know there are a lot of political thieves in Kenya as much as we have a better minimum wage because your politicians, like our politicians, are earning maximum wage. And I agree completely with him that this is also a superimposed process from the World Bank and the IMF. This is still the continuation of the structural adjustment programs of these two institutions. First, third world countries, they call them global south now, to do their biddings, even though it's not in the interest of their people. They want you to privatize water, school. When I was entering the university in 1989, our battle was against the IMF. In fact, there was an anti-IMF World Bank loan protest in 1989 that I experienced. And that time they said, don't fund education. But look at it today, the little education that we funded, the few numbers of doctors we fund people. So we must understand that when you're investing in people, you are not subsidizing them, you are not doing them any favor, you are just investing in them so that your own country can also be better. Today, these leaders we are talking about, Tinubu and the rest of them, none of them will go to a Nigerian hospital. Do you know how much it costs to park the presidential jet in any European city overnight? It's £5,000. Harry spent 140 days at a time the jet was idling there. You don't even want to know how much he spent on his hospital bills. The hospital he was in, as I'm aware, is £2,000 to stay in that hospital per night. Multiply that by the number of days he spent in hospital during maximum wage in a country, and people who are earning peanuts, who are in peonage, you are tasking them with more responsibility, you have more sacrifice. They've been asking for tightening of beds forever, but the rich people don't tighten their beds. The moment they get into office, they're losing their belt, and their bellies will be expanding until it reaches the realms of the clothes. So Nigerians must understand that this whole noise about subsidy is a distraction. Noise about subsidy removal is an attempt to choke our people to death, and this must be resisted. It's not because I'm here or because I ran in the election or because I'm an activist. It is the right of every country's citizen to benefit from the resources of their country. And we know that all around us and all over the world, we don't even have to go to Europe. People have access to education in South Africa, they have access to healthcare, they have access to things that belongs to them. But here you have access to nothing. And the little thing you have, they are always after it. They are always after that little thing you have that comes to you as a citizen of the country, which is your fundamental rights, by the way. And that's how Nigerians should look at this. This whole argument you hear about, it's time to remove the subsidy, but it's the wrong time. No, there's no wrong time to remove, there's no right time to impose suffering. The truth is that those of you who said you have half tanks, you are afraid to go to the fuel pumps because you can't afford it. That's the reality. And for a majority of our brothers who participate in this argument, and this is not to say that you have no right to say, so many of you are beneficiaries of subsidies in Europe and America. But when we are discussing this, you come to our spaces, you will not introduce yourself to us, you will not tell us your location, you say it's a personal issue, but then you want the suffering of your own people to come. And you know from experience, because I stayed in the US for 20 years, that you also have to pay for it because Western Union is also waiting for you to help those who are being choked in Nigeria. And that affects you eventually. So Nigerians must understand this. Don't beg anybody for your rights. Citizenship is your right. If you're a citizen of Nigeria, you have nowhere to go. Nobody has the right to choke you to death after they have stolen another election or they have rigged another election or whichever way they came from. I want to say one last thing about the Labour Party, because I love to talk about the Labour Party. The Labour Party is an IDP.
Why do you like Labour Party? Why don't you just leave Labour Party alone?
Any Labour Party will take anybody. Labour Party and the Labour movement are two different organizations. The Labour Party is like an Airbnb. They rent it for anybody that wants to use it for political reasons. That's why you see Peter Obi is fighting them now. They are done with the contract. They want to collect their party back. Peter Obi is in love with the Labour Party because I'm sure he's already working towards another election. That is why you're seeing the Labour Party has always been there as a renter. It's a public renter. Anybody that wants Labour, it used to be for PDP, it will go for APC. Most of their candidates are former PDP and APC people. So nobody should worry about the Labour Party. Nobody should punish the NLC because of the Labour Party. The Labour Party is a renter. It's like an Airbnb. That's why I call them internally displaced politicians. Come there, buy your time there. When you're done, move to your original party.
All right. Let me get the final thought of the other panelists on the podcast. Seun, where do we go from here? Where do we go from here?
I mean, I think the dialogue has started. Labour, the NLC, and the government, CBN, MPC, they're having their conversation. And I think someone also mentioned that this is a chance for NLC to make this conversation holistic. They have to have a hard line on the minimum wage, because definitely this is going to have significant effect on the people. I mean, and that conversation will also now cascade to state, where state governments will also now meet with different labor unions to also talk about the minimum wage. And that's why I'm of this opinion that even though we want to move for subsidy, the biggest argument for me is just because we have put our government in a state where it can no longer act as government. You know, economic sabotage, cannot police its borders, because I don't understand how we find it very easy to say that fuel in tanks, in multiples of tanks would leave Nigeria and we just move to across customs officers and all that. They also, if you look at, there was a report by National Assembly that showed a huge disparity between what NNPC claimed about petroleum products being brought in the country, the number of barrels of crude being lifted. Just too much disparity between the Nigerian Navy and NNPC and DPR, which is now known as NURPC, and also even the PPMC, which is also has a different name now. There's a discrepancy in the numbers. So there's just too much opportunity for waste and corruption. And I think that's my biggest argument for removing fuel subsidy. But the question is that has to be done in an environment of trust. I'm big to say this is a chance to tune government to be more efficient. There's nobody that leaves government in a decent society that gets out of government richer. You can build your influence outside government, but you leave a government not different from an average person. An average worker, a parliamentarian in the UK earns 60 to 80,000, around 68,000 pounds or something around that. That is not far off from what is the average workforce earns in the UK, in some sort of way. But you have Nigerian politicians earning on this side of the equation, and you have the people earning on this side of the equation. That cannot work. So that's my feeling. It has to be done in a level of trust. That has to be conversation on even tuning the efficiency of the civil service. That has to come in play. If this is a chance to raise a single bond where you pay off a lot of people that you feel are not useful or productive to the system, this is the time for the government to put it on the table. And finally, it's also the business of doing government work. There has to be efficiency in public contracting. There's too much waste. Every day you read budgets, too much waste in how we handle public treasury in Nigeria. And until that happens, until that changes, if you like, remove subsidy, if you like, give Nigerian government 100 trillion naira, it's not going to change anything, because you are dealing with power asymmetry that has put power on the side of some people and has not given power actually to the people. So that's where I will pitch my tent as much as possible.
Thank you so much, Sean. I really appreciate that. Alwan, your final thought.
So I think it's done, and the conversation has started.
You think it's done?
Yeah.
Labour wants.
This is a serious government. So I think the conversation has started, just as Seun has said, and let's look at some policies that will cushion the effects of the removal.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Showara, do you have a final thought?
Well, there's no conversation that can deal with the depth of this new series of injustices that is about to be perpetrated against the Nigerian people. Like I've always said, it's up to Nigerian people to stand up to these characters who come back and forth hijacking government. You can't put any palliatives in place that will not be stolen by these political parties. They steal for a living. And if you put palliatives, they'll be hijacked by the parties. If you put 5,000 for each person, the party leaders will hijack them at the grassroots level. They are not coming to govern. They are coming to take care of their own personal business interests. And until Nigerians realize this and continue to bond together and teach these guys a big lesson once and for all, we'll keep having these backward conversations. And I hate to say that sometimes it's quite burdensome for people like me to keep repeating. These are the kind of conversation we had when I was a student at the University of Lagos against Babangida. I had the same against Abacha, against Obasanjo. And then now, 30 years later, we are still discussing fuel subsidies, things that are mundane and very, retarded. And I just hope Nigerians understand this and they know what I mean. Thank you very much for having me. And good to see you.
Thank you so much. Okay, yeah. There are two shows here.
A good man.
Yeah, good to see you.
My presidential candidate.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Until you choose the right presidential candidates, you keep doing debates on fuel subsidy.
I'm going to zoom now too.
We were going to make you the Minister of Finance, but you lost.
Yeah, so what I already promised me, I'm his Minister of Finance.
I trust your judgment. I may not agree with.
But you didn't campaign for you, Showore.
I know now. They are the Labour Party people now. They are the Labour Party.
They are the
IDPs.
I didn't campaign for anybody in the last election. I was neutral. But Showore is my perpetual presidential candidate. I'm always on.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Jolly good fellows. Omoyele Showore, the presidential candidate of the AAC into 2023 election, and Seun Onigbinde, co-founder of Budget. Alwan Hassan, political commentator and a member of the APC. Thank you so much, Alwan, for coming on the podcast. There you have it, everyone. Every speaker on this podcast have given diverse views on the topic, but they have all agreed on one thing, and that is the welfare of the people being seriously and the need to cut the cost of governance. Cost of governance in Nigeria is worth looking into, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, the bottom line is all of these monies in government and the federation account, is it not supposed to be for the benefit of the average Nigerian? Well, a country where the government spends over 70% of the budget on recurrent expenditure and less than 30% on capital expenditure, that's an obvious recipe for disaster, isn't it? We've had the benefit of getting the view of how it works from across the borders, and we've also learned that subsidy on production value chain works way better than subsidizing consumption like oil and or what have you. And over the years, we've learned our lessons. So fuel subsidy removal and the attendant chaos is only a part of the big economic problems Nigeria is facing right now. The economic numbers are not looking good, and this is in the face of continued lack of accountability and almost culture of transparency. Whether ill-timed or never phased and out, and the effects are biting hard